Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. You came to the right place. I am so glad you're here. If this is your first time listening, welcome. If you are a repeat listener, I am so grateful for you. I am grateful for every single solitary soul that listens to this podcast. You're the reason I do this. I appreciate your reviews, sharing it on social media. I'm just grateful you're here because today's episode is for those that are divorced or in a blended family, thinking about a blended family, or you are really not sure where to even begin, whether blended family is even a good idea. We're going to be talking about all those things. We're going to be talking about the top 5 things couples should consider before blending a family. We're talking about finances and how does that play into it? Children, how to navigate that? Who's doing what? Roles and responsibilities. We kind of dive into it, all of it. My guest has been on the podcast before, so we're going to link that episode in the show notes. So if you want to go back and listen to that one first, you can. Donna Kendrick is a certified financial planner, practitioner. After losing her husband suddenly in 2013, we talk about that in this episode briefly, because that's really what we talked about in our first episode. Donna navigated widowhood with 3 young children, inspiring her to support families in transition through financial planning. She is the host of the Wisdom and Wealth podcast and the author of A Guide to Widowhood and A Guide for Blended Families. That's her newest book. She's also an avid long-distance runner who, through her running group, raises funds for causes such as Safe Harbor, a grief counseling program for children. She lives in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania, with her husband, Jim, and their 6 kids. We get into all of it. We get into what was helpful in this transition, what's been the hardest. We kind of break it down. We just have a conversation, and I hope it's helpful to you. If it is, write a review, share it. And if it's not, then you can just click on past. No problem. I think it's important we talk about all different topics on this podcast because we all have different situations we're navigating. So I try to cover as much as I can about the different situations you might be facing. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Donna. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. I have a repeat guest. She was on episode 216, where we talked about finances, because that's really your background. And today we're going to be talking about a guide for blended families. So if you're in this situation, you're about to be in this situation, or you have a friend, family member about ready to blend a family or in a blended family, this episode is going to be for you. So Donna, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back to the Close the Chapter podcast.
Thank you so much. I am excited to be here again. I was saying, it's like, oh my gosh, like I get to spend time with an old friend. I love it. But a big joy for me to be able to share this version of our book and the stories that go along with it and the lessons that we've learned. So it's fun.
It's an important topic because blending a family is a huge decision. And it's one that people often don't take lightly. Some do, but often if you're a parent, you're going to take it seriously because you're thinking about how is this not only going to impact me, but my kids, their kids, and then etc. families. So I think it's an important topic. So tell us why you decided to write this.
Yeah. Back in 2020, we wrote our first book, A Guide to Widowhood. And it was a lot of my experiences of losing my first husband in 2013 and how I kind of recreated my career and the lessons I'd learned as a widow. And then we're able to perfect the advice around it and the recommendations, as well as the best facts for how to lean forward into getting your finances together when you're in grief, right? And how to make those decisions, when to know how to slow your roll. And I was really proud of it. And I was really happy that people had it in their hands. And it was pretty much like all of my wisdom put into the pages. It was great. And then here comes this opportunity for me to blend my family with Jim and get remarried. We got remarried. Actually, it was probably 2 weeks after that first book was published. I know. And I kind of just thought to myself, wait a second. Like, if I'm going to share the first end of the journey, I got to share the second because I felt very vulnerable on the second part of the journey of blending the families, of giving away some of that control that I had created for myself, fought for my kids, moving as a sole parent into business owner, into giving advice to others. And I wasn't listening to a lot of my own advice when I was
Mm.
blending our families. And a lot of it wasn't just numbers on a page, which is what I was looking at. It was emotions, it was values, it was outlook for 6 kids, not just 3. It was retirement, it was taking care of one another. And I only had to take care of myself for the longest time. So I had to learn to listen. I had to learn to be patient. I had to learn to take advice from other financial advisors, not just what I knew, because you only know what you know sometimes, and wise counsel around me, such as estate attorneys and accountants. And God, even with my business, succession plans, continuity plans, because now there's someone else to take care of. There's 3 more kids to take care of. It was big. And I thought, all right, let me just be honest. Let me put it in the pages of this book. A lot of the financial lessons are the same as the ones in widowhood, but someone blending a family might not pick up that widowhood book. Most likely they won't. So let's get these lessons, make them available for the blended families, be earnest about our own journey and how we approached it, and then how we could have done it differently.
It's helpful because to know your journey and how you landed here.
Hmm.
So to know that you went through grief, you went through transition, you went through building yourself back up again, essentially, being on your own. Then here you go going, okay, now I'm gonna have to give up some of this control.
Yeah, that's really
That's
what it
scary
was.
for people. I'm telling you, because we are scared to give up control.
Yeah, I like control. I like being right. Still like being right. And I liked actually doing it in my own role. And I remember standing in the middle of the foyer one day when the kids were giving me a hard time. I mean, like, all right, who disagrees with me? And it was just me as a sole parent, like, no one, my way, and walked out the front door. Pretty much not the best parenting tip, but it was my way. Doesn't work that way anymore. It really doesn't work that way. And the kids, for God bless them, they learned quick that there is now leverage. There's leverage in the household, and how are they going to use it? That might have been one of my biggest learning lessons of, okay, they're young adults now, and now there's another player. And how do we all stay on the same page? And how do we all represent ourselves as one family? That was big.
That's big. So how old were all the kids? Do you know? Like when you
Yeah.
blended
So the official blend,
yours and then his.
yeah. So we got married in 2022. And my kids, I have the older 3. I'm a little older than my husband. He makes sure I add that into any podcast that I can. My oldest was 21. Then I had a 20-year-old. Then I had an 18-year-old. And he had a 16, a 15, and a 12. So,
Were yours going to college? Was your 18-year-old still in high school or were they making the transition to college?
yeah. So my 18-year-old was still in high school. I had 2 away in college. It's hard because it was like coming off of 2020 when they were away at college and they all came back home. And you're like, wait, who still lives here? Like,
Yeah.
who
Like,
doesn't?
who's here now?
Yeah. So pretty much we were all still under one roof. And so people can kind of follow a little bit of the story. It's a little easier in the podcast to share than the pages of the book. So we got married in 2022 in June. And soon after, my stepkids, their mom passed. And so we had known that she was really sick.
Oh,
And it was a lot of decisions that we made, one, to get married, and two, to be this blended family. Because when my son, who was still in high school, my youngest, 17, when he was in high school up until January of the year he graduated, then we could actually move school districts. So January of the year he was graduating, we were able to keep him in the same school, but moved the school district for the younger 3. So when their mom passed, we were able to keep them in the same school district. So all of a sudden, just that financial plan we pulled together and all that cooperation and great discussions got flipped on its head because now we have to go afford a new house. Well, we still own one, and then we have to time it correctly. In essence, it all worked out beautifully. We were able to be in the school district for my stepkids probably about 6 months before their mom passed. And then they were able to just roll continuing on their very next day in their school district with the family they loved, with the friends that they had, while keeping my kids where they needed to be.
you went through and your kids went through a loss with your first husband.
Exactly.
And then the Jim's kids,
Yeah.
that's your husband's name, right?
Yes, exactly.
Then
Nailed it.
he lost his ex,
Yep.
and then they lost their mom.
Yes.
So was that helpful to that? I know that sounds hard to say,
No,
but
I think it really was. One, I think all the adults played very nicely. Everybody was being very mature, very kind, very forthcoming, and really with the agenda of we want these three kids to be okay for as much as
Mhm.
okay can be. So I will tell you that it was gradual, like they paired off. So like each of Jim's kids kind of picked one of my kids that they just felt the closest to. I remember the youngest one being like, I got the Kendrick with a car, right? She got the oldest one. And a lot of conversations with my big kids because they were 8, 11, and 12 when their dad passed, and their dad passed suddenly. So it was more like, how can you be a resource for these young kids with everything you know, with how you knew it was to be a teenager, with not having a parent? And to my kids, how can you share a little bit of the wisdom of the things I might have done right or wrong so that we can share that with Jim or do something a little differently this time around? But they definitely had listening ears. They definitely had a family full of empathy. And I give it to my late husband's family. They were a big Irish Catholic family, 5 brothers and sisters. My husband was the youngest. They have wrapped themselves around those younger kids as if they were Kendricks, as if they were their own, because it's almost like an extra per 3 people for them to love on. Yeah, it's been great. Been great.
Wow, what a story. I mean,
Yeah.
really, of love and redemption and walking other people through their pain and grief. I mean,
Yeah. And on top of it, I have to say, like, my kids took part of what we call Safe Harbor. So that's like a free grief, peer support grief counseling at a local hospital here. It was the best thing for my kids. It's based on the work of the Dougie Center. And wow, my kids did such a great job there. So we were already, I say, talking the talk. We were in this grief conversation for years. So we had the resources in line. And we knew a lot of those moving parts and the good counselors and what schools Safe Harbor ran through to get these resources for the kids going even before their mom's loss. So that was helpful.
that is so helpful. And I encourage anyone listening, if you're going through a loss, okay, there's many nonprofits here in Indianapolis. It's Brooks Place. It's kids going through grief. And there's grief when there's a divorce, and there's
Mhm.
grief when there's a blended family. We
Yes.
don't really talk about that too much. It's hard to name. And therapy can be so helpful for kids to make sure we're letting them have that space to have their grief if it's there. I'm not saying it always is, but
Yeah.
often the case there is grief because what they knew is now it's a loss. It's
Yeah.
not the same as what they thought it would be. And then holidays, whatever holidays you celebrate look different. Birthdays look different. Weddings and births and traumas all look different. And I think
Yeah.
that's something we don't talk about with blended families enough.
It's true. We're not just aware of what our unit, mine and my husband and the 6 kids, what we are doing for the holiday. We have to be aware of what my late husband's family is doing, what their mom's family is doing, what the good friends that feel like close family are doing, and then what we want as a unit. And so, really, how do we, as parents, lead? Because that's what it is. It's leading the kids into these holiday discussions, into the right words to be able to use, to the compromise. Yeah, that takes a lot of awareness. It does.
Yeah. And self work, I think to be able to tolerate naming their own emotions, the kids' own emotions. Like it's okay if you feel sad, mad, angry, scared,
Yeah. Pissed
shocked,
off.
pissed
Sorry.
off.
Really, that's the word.
Yeah, pissed off and letting them have that, naming it and letting
Yeah.
them have that space now within reason, right? We're not hurting anyone else, but we're allowing them to share what they really feel, not to placate, not to please, not to, we're saying it's okay. This is going to bring up hard feelings and it's okay to
Yeah.
have them.
Yeah, and I think it's because we blended so close to the passing of their mom, and now we had been in one another's lives for years, so it's not we were uncommon, but it's like a new reality. There's a line in the sand, there's a new normal. Right when they needed their dad's love, 100% all in, he was also sharing love with 3 other kids that he had just moved out of their family home to move into this new home in their kids' district, and that was hard. That was hard to manage the expectations of everybody, myself included. On back burner for a little while. That's okay.
Yeah. That shows the work you've done that you can, you're like, I understand it's okay. There's going to be times where the kids will have to come first. I don't mean that in a,
No, no,
they might need more
true.
from us as parents.
Yeah. And then there's the finances of it, right? Like, what did I come into the relationship with? And what did in my head I want to leave from my late husband for my own children? And now I have 3 more and they've lost their mom too. So, wait, what's available for them financially in the long run? And what is mine? What is yours? What is Jim's? What is the kids? What is ours? And that's something too that I think my own children were like, wait a second. We divide by 6 or divide by 3. I'm like, you're dividing by 0 because it's all mine.
But they're legitimate questions. They're
It is.
curious. I mean,
It
and so
is.
what are the things you want people to know before you decide? We're going to segment this, folks that are still considering, and then we're going to do after. Maybe
Okay.
they've already made that decision. So what would you have them consider before they blend the family? And I
Before
know
they
there's
blend the
5
family.
things you kind of
Yeah.
highlight.
Nail in. The one. Figure out your net worth individually and then together. So net worth is what do you own and what do you owe? It's the math equation of what do I own in my retirement funds, in my bank account, in my property, and then what do I owe in mortgages, credit card debt, things like that. One of the healthiest, sometimes hardest activity I always tell to my families before they blend is everyone pull your credit report and then let's come to the table. Bring red wine if you have to. Let's go. Because you can actually see everyone's credit history. Now, we're both coming from separate marriages. So even though you have your own credit history, if you own an account jointly, it can be affected by someone else's credit decisions. So let's just go through and just going through all of those accounts and the life of the accounts and how many missed payments, if there's any, and what's the credit limit on it, will open up the conversations. So when you're trying to find that net worth, pull a copy of your credit report and then just start. And when you're pulling that credit report, make sure that you're actually telling everyone, all right, like this is the history behind that. Like it might be, oh my God, Macy's was having a fantastic sale. And so I got that credit card for free. I used it once. I should have canceled it. These are those conversations you're having. And then you can start to see patterns in that person next to you. So once you have that net worth, what do I own? What do I owe? That's my net worth. Then when we move together, should we move together in blending officially, what's going to stay in my name? What's going to become held jointly? What stays in your name? Where are we going to be saving towards the future? So we understand what's ours. We understand what we owe. We understand what our net worth is. We've pulled that credit report. Now we're understanding cash flow. Moving forward, what bills do we have to pay? And where's the money coming from? I think for many of my blended families, maybe the divorce was 10 years ago, but they were married for 25. Maybe one of the spouses doesn't realize that alimony might stop should they get remarried. Myself, I had a government pension from my late husband. And one of the reasons I was reluctant to get married to Jim, even though I loved him and I wanted to be married, is my pension stopped. When I got remarried, my pension stopped. So I had to make sure I was bringing in enough money to cover that pension and that I was emotionally okay with letting go of that pension because I gave up my career for so many years to follow my late husband abroad. And I felt like that pension was well deserved. There's an emotional attachment to money, to net assets, to cash flow. So figure out your net worth, pull that credit report, figure out your cash flow, and then understand the goals for the long-term planning. Now, you don't have to do every one. We want those big macro goals. One goal might be I want to retire at 60 and I want to move to the Caribbean. I don't. I want to keep working for the very long time with some great schedule between that. Well, maybe my Jim wants to be out at 60. So that's not going to work if I'm still working till 70. And I don't like the Caribbean. I like to stay stateside. Like these are those things. And yeah, they're just goals, but we have to put them out there. And then we have to kind of make that roadmap. Do you remember the game like Chutes and Ladders when we were younger? How do we get there? Right? Like that's it. Like here's where we want to be in retirement. Let's agree on some basics. And then how do we get there? Or we shared earlier my story. We had decided we were staying in the house I raised my kids in when we came stateside because we had lived abroad for years. And that's actually how I met Jim. Years ago, he came to that house. It was a fixer-upper as a handyman to help some young poor widow figure it out. Years later, we reconnected. And therefore, that's my Jim. So I always say, what great work you did because you live in the house now. That's part of it. But we had never thought we were going to sell that house. So now all of a sudden that big goal changed. So now the roadmap has to change. We had to shuffle money from one pocket into the other to be able to afford a house while we were selling one. Huge financial change. And I think if we didn't understand the net worth, the cash flow, we wouldn't have been able to get there. So that's a big one too. I always say too, make sure that you have a really good support team with you. So when we decided where the cash flow was and we had that net worth, what's mine, what's yours, what's his, what's hers, what's for the kids, you write it down. You get an estate attorney, you get someone to help you. Yes, that word prenup, if that's what works for you guys, to see it on paper, to say this is what it is, then you sign it. After you get married, estate documents. Before you get married, prenup. And that can be a hard conversation for people. It can be. There's ways to also make sure beneficiary designation, life insurance. Is it still going to go to my 3 kids or does it go to Jim now? Or because we bought this new home, do I need to insure Jim to help me pay off the bigger home? Because we needed what we had 6 bedrooms for all the kids. That was one of our things. Everyone gets a bedroom. Okay. So now how do we use life insurance to cover that? We start unrolling or unraveling all of these topics when we sit and we map out that roadmap of how do we get here. Starting point at Chutes and Ladders, all of our net worth, cash flow, the rungs that get us there, and then the roadmap at the end. And so making sure you have that support team, your accountants, your counselors. These conversations many times have to be guided. There's emotions to everyone's money. And we all come with, I would say, our experience of our own marriages and how we negotiated money, as well as how we saw our parents negotiate money. I can say Jim and I came with better clarity because of the experience for both of us from our first marriage and how to cooperate as a married couple. I'm happy we both had the experience somewhere else because it really wasn't hard. It was just confusing. That's better.
Mhm.
So, and the other part is like, enjoy it. This is a beautiful opportunity to reset some starting points and start fresh. So enjoy those conversations together. They don't have to always be hard. It's always to get to the common goal of being able to blend your families well and have a successful future.
Well, I'm questioning like the kids' expenses. Who's going to pay for your kids? Who's going to pay for his kids? Who's going to pay for colleges, school, clothing? And we have some of that mapped out when we have a divorce per se. Let's say a lot of people are listening are divorced. And so they've had a divorce. And so they have to still work with the ex.
Yeah.
And financially, they still are tied to the ex. How do
Yep.
you negotiate that up front? I would imagine that's a huge part of the conversation as well.
It is. And that's where that whole cash flow part of it is. And asking some educated questions. I always say to people that you cannot negotiate child support for your kids. You might have not sought, like someone might not seek it, or you have agreed not to seek it, but that can change. You can always go back for child support for your kids, and that money and that amount can change depending on income and who has how many hours of the kids per week. Like it's grids, numbers are numbers at times. So you have to be ready when you're going through that cash flow to say, wait, this number might go up. Can we make it together? And are you willing as a spouse to help me if I owe more on this end? Why does my income go down because I married you and decisions you made before me are impactful?
Mm-hmm.
It's part of it. And for us, I and my late husband had our own discussions about how we're going to educate the kids. So when my husband passed, I had life insurance in force to be able to fully fund state colleges for my kids. Jim and his ex-wife had made the decision to be in a beautiful, wonderful school district, educate them well, and then college education was on the kids. And so how do I feel good telling my kids, the world's your oyster as long as it's a state school or the budget of a state school? And then Jim's kids, I'm like, woo, that student loan's going to be big. Careful. That's hard. That's really hard. And some of it is to sitting the kids down and saying, all right, these were the rules that my late husband and I set for my kids. This is how I understand it. And this is how your dad and I are going to approach it. I'll help for as much as I can. I'll co-sign blank, blank, blank. This is how it works. What I also will say is the kids are always listening. They're always watching. They're watching how I parent my older kids. They're watching how I spend money on them and vice versa. So the litmus sometimes is just in the daily exposure, and it will correct itself. I believe that, but you have to be open for it. You have to be open for it to be corrected. You can't be so staunch in my way, your way. That's the big difference.
It's tough because your kids are your biological kids, or they're your kids because you've chosen to adopt them or whatever. You
Yep.
have biological kids. He's got his kids. And so you love the kids differently. And this isn't that you don't care about them.
Sure.
You do, but it's just a different love.
It's a different love. It's a different length of relationship. I've been in a relationship with my kids for 18 years. I've been in a relationship with these guys for as much as I adore them. Well, for many, for like 10, but like in this relationship, like 7 and married officially 2. So it is very different. And I put myself out there, and God, this isn't finance, this is just person. I'm like, all I am right here is an extra layer of love because you have a great parent in front of you. And so that is what I am. That's what I can offer you. If you need more from that, you tell me. And I'm more than happy to. I believe I'm a good parent. These 3 kids above you, even though they can be buggers, they're good people. So you call me in when you need me to.
I
And
like
that's,
how you said I'm extra layer of love.
yeah. Their dad isn't big into, the PTA stuff, not big into the parent-teacher conferences. He gives his kids a whole lot of wiggle room to succeed or not, and I'm more of the coming out of rehab helicopter parent, where I'm always watching because we lived abroad. The education was so different everywhere, and I'm just always kind of figuring it out. But I'm the first one to be like, "Whoa, what's that grade? Okay, you tell me, about it. I'm gonna go see the teacher." And I will tell you, my extra layer of love they didn't think involved, "I'm gonna go sit with your math teacher." They're like, "Oh,
And
no,
they're like,
no, we don't
this
need that
isn't what
type of
I
love."
yes.
But it does. But even that, to get the rights to be on the school newsletter as a step parent, tough,
Oh, very.
very tough.
And what do you have to do for that? Do you have
You
to have a
have
legal
You do. You have to have
what
legal
does that look like?
guardianship. For me, it was actually our marriage certificate, and it was after their mom passed, I was a legal guardian at the same residence. So there we go. But their dad had to nominate me as a legal guardian for them in case of emergency, permission with the schools that you can call this person. That was literally the summer that their mom passed, going into the school
Mm.
district and saying, "What do I need?" And she has permission for this. And is it okay with the kids? And it makes me feel so good when my older daughter needs Advil. They have to call. I'm like, "Oh, they called me because she had cramps." Like, that's good because I didn't want them to have to call her dad in that situation. So I'm happy for the kids that they have me as that extra person. But when they want to not go to school in the morning, they are not asking me. They are asking their father. Like, that's how it works because he'll say, "Sure, stay home." And I would probably tell them to go in.
Yeah, so they ask biological parent or parent, that's where you're kind of see, this is the other thing, you're figuring this out before. You guys sound like you talked about a lot of these things before. Now, some of these you get into and don't realize. I'm not on the school newsletter. I mean, that stuff you don't think about ahead of time,
Yeah.
perhaps. Some do,
And that
maybe
had to be the
most don't.
communication. I don't have access. So if you want me to monitor the school calendar, Jim, you and I have to sit down together and you have to show me it so that I can go through. I mean, in the world of Google, you can find things out. But still, it was a big part. It was a big part of it of, yes, pre-planning and knowing. And also when you hit a road bump, reacting well.
And I think that's key because a lot of people get triggered and
Mm.
get dysregulated, and then that affects the kids. And so, one of the key things is noticing when you're getting triggered, how to self soothe, regulate so you can still show up for the kids in a healthy way. You're going to say something about it?
No, I think a lot of it too is also how are you going to support best? For me, being able to be a lead breadwinner in the family so that Jim could take some time off. He's part of my practice to lower his hours here so he could be home with the kids more, so he could be that pick up and drop off, that parent watching baseball. I thought that was really, really important. And so I picked up a lot of Jim's hours in my own practice to make sure he could be home with the kids. And so therefore I work a lot. And so when you walk in and the youngest of your blend says, "Your name again? I'm sorry. Do you live here?" Like, it's gutting. It's absolutely gutting. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm doing all I can to keep the lights on, to keep the mortgage paid. And that's how I feel like I'm showing my love. But they're 14. They don't know that. They don't know that it's been a decision from their dad and I to keep him home more. And he's working on this house that we bought together that was in bad shape, and he's talented. He can do that. These are those things that the kids don't see the whole perspective. But that would be something that Jim and I didn't really even share with them. We just did it. And maybe it should have been a conversation of,
Well, it
all
still
right,
can be. I think
yeah,
it's
oh
I
no,
think that's a
it
really
was after
helpful
that
one.
one. I was like, "Hey, buddy, come here." You see those new Adidas? They didn't come from Santee. They came from me. Like, come on.
And you can sit down. I think it's never too late. This is a great point. It's never too late to talk to the kids about this, about
Okay.
things. I love
Yeah.
it.
And
I'm all about the family communication. I'm
their perspective
passionate
is
about it.
different from when they knew their mom was sick and the world was whirling around for them to teenagers in the house watching Jim and I pivot. like they will understand it differently. My son, who's now has an apartment of his own, understands taxes and utilities and car insurance very different than what he did in the house with us. Those are the things. So you're right. It's never too late. And it's often good to revisit and check in.
It is. I think that the more we communicate, it settles kids' nervous systems. Not overshare, of course. We're not like, well,
Sure.
I'm so mad at him. No, those are personal things.
Yeah.
But like, here's what's happening. How do you feel about it? Your dad's going to be home more with you. I'm going to bring home more of the bacon, pay up the difference. And I want to do that. I'm doing that because I feel I want to. I'm not doing it because I have to. And just how do you feel about that? I
Yeah.
love the how do you feel? It's my number one. And people are like, oh my gosh, it's such a therapist question.
But
It
it's a
really
good
is life
one.
changing.
It's not a yes or no. It's not a
No,
yes.
how
It
do you
deserves
feel
an
about
answer.
it? And it deserves somebody to have a voice and to be able to be seen. Like it's not just about us communicating at you. We're actually really curious on how you feel about it.
Yeah.
And there will be feelings come up about it, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Share them.
No, and one thing I have to say I learned with my kids, now I apply to my practice, is a wise man once said nothing. Sometimes you just have to leave that quietness. You have to leave that back seat of the car with no one talking, because then the information will come. And just like many times the kids will tell me half a story and I'll just stay there and I'll be like, oh, and then? And then you just leave it quiet. And they will in time tell you what happened next.
Right before bedtime, they're going to tell
Yeah,
you.
and then but that it is. I like that you probe that way because that's how you figure out the emotional attachment to an action.
And process it. Like, we're not
Yeah.
shoving it down, we're not numbing it out, we're not moving away from it, we're actually facing it, we're feeling it, we're moving through it when we can, and when the
Yeah.
space allows it and when we're able to. So I think that's blended families is a huge component, and I know a lot of people get afraid of, "Am I gonna repeat a pattern?" Like, let's say I'm gonna pick somebody in a different package, but there's gonna be a repeated pattern there. If let's say they came from financial troubles with the ex, and now they think they have it all out there, but let's say they're in a situation where they are repeating a pattern financially.
Yeah.
How do they start talking about how to get out of it?
Yeah. I mean, that takes me back to doing that annual credit report. Like, that's where we're learning the patterns, right? And a lot of it is like, just even casually, like, tell me, how did your parents deal with money back when you grew up? You will learn so much when we start to share stories. Like, no, they never talked about it. Like, I figured it out on my own from, the guy I went to college with. Like, really? That frat boy is where you learned your financial strength? Like, here we go. That's hard. There's also ways you can communicate about money. It's called behavior finance. It's big in my industry, right? And you can actually take surveys. Like there's one that we give called Financial Virtues, where people will actually say, okay, like this is how I tend to make my decisions about money in life. This has a moral context to it, or I need to see results on mathematical and quantitative, right? So you can actually kind of change the way you talk to one another about money, because sometimes if it is a repeated pattern, it can feel accusatory. And it might be a repeated pattern because of your job. Maybe it's commission based. And so it flows with seasons. If you know that, you're ready and prepared for it. So a lot of it is, how did you make decisions in the past? How did you see your parents make decisions in the past? What did you consider a strength in your relationship prior about finances? What was something that you wish could be different? If you had a magic wand for you and I to do this together, how would it feel? And are you okay with it? Like my current husband, he likes to generally kind of know, but the big in detail part and retirement and all of that, nope. Mm-mm. Mortgage paperwork, nope. No thanks. Just tell me where to sign, right? And when I watch him sign something he didn't read, I'm like, oh my God, no. Like we have to go back. But those are those things that, I knew that about him because his wife was in the IRS. So she had numbers, she had an accounting background. So I knew she ran that all and that he was happy to give that responsibility. It was obvious. So, of course, like we did a podcast, my husband and I together, and someone asked, like, what's the best advice you have for somebody in a second marriage? And he said, marry a financial advisor. I was like, buddy, they're looking for more than that, right? But he knew it wasn't his strength. But that's a big part of it. And when you start to understand where someone's coming from in their history, it's when you can actually, then that might be a pattern. Like if you didn't know where they came from, this is all new to you.
I think these are great questions. When I got married, I was like, I need a nest egg and I need it at a certain amount. Like there was something in me that said, I just want this certain amount. And we needed to talk about it. And do you have to have a certain amount in savings? How much do you need for emergencies? What does that look like? And then what is your pattern with credit cards and money? I think this is a big one. What is your pattern with credit cards? Some
Yeah.
don't believe it in at all. And some just are like, I pay the minimum. And some are like, oh, I have to pay it off every month. Are you crazy? You've got to pay this off every month. Like, even talking about that,
It's huge.
it's
And, like,
huge.
even for my husband, if he said, like, "What's your average credit card bill?" It would be enormous because I get points on my credit card,
All
and
about the
so
point.
if they're allowing me to put it on my credit card, I'll run the mortgage through it, I'll run car payments through it, I'll get the points, I could pay for tuition from those bonuses, but everything in checking is going straight on, and I actually use the credit card, their app, to say, "Okay, where do we spend most of our money?" And when I see the Amazon budget get too high, we need to detach the credit card from the Amazon budget. That's a little bit different. But no, my husband would have been floored. So there's also a why to it. Like, Donna, why is your average credit card 6 to 8,000, right? Oh, because I put everything for the house on it. So our average run of the house is 6 to 8,000. This is what it is. Where he might think I just have a spending habit with pretty purses and coats, and I don't. He sees how I look when I go to work. So these are those things. But if he wouldn't have asked me the why, he wouldn't have known that that's how I run the budget to get points and that our family goes on vacation on those points each and every year. I love it. Self-satisfying.
My favorite thing in the world. I'm so grateful when I go on vacation, I can use my points.
It's so nice.
It
It is
is
so nice.
so amazing. I
I
love
know.
it so much. Is there anything we didn't cover when it comes to blended families that you feel like is important to make a note of?
I think a lot of it is having transparent conversations with yourselves as a couple. Where are we now? Where do we want to be? And how do we get there? Having a lot of forgiveness for all those decisions in the past because we are just where we are right now. We cannot change anything but the next best step. And then when you get on the same page and you feel very secure in the way you guys are moving forward, especially when there's kids involved, and that's the blend of a family, whether it's one child from one of the spouses, but the blend age appropriate and need to know appropriate, have a conversation with those kids and make it clear. Just like we were talking about my working versus him staying home and the communication around it. We missed that step. We missed the communication around the why. So sit down together and have a shared conversation, not, oh, I'll talk about it in the morning. Did you talk to him about it? Together and just check in. It's not a one and done. A 14-year-old will hear it differently than a 16-year-old and a 20-year-old. I would rather be forthcoming with all 6 kids at one table than whisper down the lane.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
important. Okay, this is a new segment that I created because I love this segment that you have not done before.
Okay.
Okay. What is one or two books that have spoken to you, inspired you, that have made an impact in your life? And it doesn't have to be related to finances, it can be anything.
I have it over here. Hold tight.
Oh, you already have it. Okay.
Hold tight.
Okay. I love this.
I'm like,
I see you
oh,
grab two. I see you
I
grab
got 2.
two.
All right. This is it. You talked about hero on a mission. It's like writing your own obituary.
Ooh.
When I pass, what do I want people saying about me? And then how am I going to get there? This year, next year, 10 years? How am I going to get there? And literally, there's activities in it that you write it, you stick it in your planner, and then you're literally going through and you're reading it every day.
Have
And
you done it?
oh, I have. I do it every day.
I want to hear it, but you don't have to read it.
It's good. I mean, but it is. And it really helps me with the direction of where I'm taking my family, of where I'm taking my business, of what I want to put values behind what I do. Yeah, it was really helpful again for this blended family and this new community that I live in now. How do I want to present myself in the community? I'm the new one. I'm moving into the community that raised these kids, that watched their mom be sick. And how do I represent the kids in this family best? So that's a good one. Your own mission, writing your own
You're on a
obituary.
mission. Okay.
Love
I
it.
love that.
Love it. Love
Okay.
it. And this one, hey, I'm a financial advisor with a little woo in her life, but living
I
untethered.
love. Oh, yes. Michael
Oh,
Singer, Living
Michael Singer.
Untethered.
I went through all of his books, and Living Untethered was the very last one I read. And I mean, I wish I would have read it first, but it literally just taught me for the moment. And like you talked about, of just making sure you have a voice, that you have calmness, that you have breathing. So that is how you can move forward with your kids, these conversations. Taking care of the you, because when you becomes we, becomes us, becomes everyone else. If the you isn't strong, the rest is just going to fail. Or not fail, falter, be bumpy. So make it a little bit
Yeah.
harder. So those are my 2. Give me one of yours. I
Oh,
love book recommendations.
I love these. Oh, one for me that sticks out? Any of Brene Brown's books?
Mm-hmm.
Love her books. The Gifts and Imperfection is awesome. Have you read that one?
I have. Big Audible girl. You can do a lot of things while listening to Audible.
This one's a daily. This is Melody Beattie, and she wrote Journey to the Heart. I recommend this to everybody. You can read it each day. It has a different, and there's no year on it or anything. And I love these. I think these speak to you like just bite-sized chunks. If someone's like, I don't want to read a whole book, then Journey to the Heart, Melody Beattie. Love it.
Love it. I'm going to throw one more in there.
Oh, throw one more, please.
Kind of like a book, but it's also like a life choice. Miracle Morning.
Oh, yes.
Just to wake up a little bit earlier and do a little bit of writing, a little bit of meditation, a little bit of scribing, to read and to exercise and get that all done before you start your day. So it's almost like in my mind, my day doesn't start till 7, but I wake up at 4:30 because I'm trying to get all of these activities in. And then, making lunch and everything else. But these are those activities that I don't compromise on them. They have to happen.
Okay, wait, I want to pause because this is so good.
Yeah.
You get up at 4:30 every day, or do you miss some?
No. 4:30, my friend. 4:30. Sometimes 4, but 4:30 is the late sleepy.
Okay, now question for you. If you what time do you go to bed?
9 to 9:30.
Now, what if you go to bed late?
I'm just cranky.
I was going to say, see, we all need scientifically our sleep, but I can feel it in my mood. I'm like in my tone, and I don't mean it to be, but I can feel the difference. So how do you manage that? Like if you don't get enough sleep?
It's almost like a joke. Like last night we're recording this on a Monday. It's the holiday time. And we had my new husband's extended family from his late mom over. There was 20 people. I knew 3, right? Like that's how new this is. And it was just a wonderful event. But at 9:00, I stood up and I was like, love you all. Good night. And the party was still going on. And it was my brother and sister-in-law that were like, she doesn't stay up past 9 ever. I will leave events. I will leave everything. 9
You're committed.
It's not negotiable. It's not negotiable. No, I might lay in bed. I might read. I might do my nighttime routine. I always get my meditation done in the morning and then before I leave work, before I transfer from work to home, as a definite divide in my day. That has been really, really helpful. But yeah, so then you wake up in the miracle morning, you hydrate before you start anything. And think about how many times we want to drink a gallon of water a day. Well, we're starting that as soon as we wake up. And then I have this own little area in my room that it's just no one interrupts me. It's my closet, my friends. I sit in my closet and I'm just like, no one find me. We have dogs. And if you just stay there, then no one wakes up before you. Like as soon as the dog's here, you're up. You're done.
Oh, you're done.
You're done. But yeah, that's really what it is. And I go through my miracle morning. And I'll tell you, there's times where I travel where I'm like, okay, I can't get that all in, or the weather's bad. You can make miracle morning last an hour and a half. It can last 15 minutes. You can accelerate everything.
But
some part of the miracle morning gets done each and every day.
When did you start that?
About 1.5 years ago.
What made you start it? See, this is what I love to hear these things. Like what made you start? Because I'm come in and out of it. Yeah. My morning routine. And when I'm in it, oh man, it's juicy.
It's like the one thing I can depend on.
Yes.
Beautiful morning.
It so resets you. So 1.5 years ago, you decided you needed a reset or what?
Yeah. There wasn't enough time for me. And I felt like, how do I lead this ship with everybody else when I can't even keep my brain afloat? So how do I find miracle morning? For my business, I did the 12-week year and was following that protocol for setting goals for my business. One personal, I would do one for my business and one for my family. Family or community is how I would run it. So we did miracle morning. We do the 12-week year, and I was in a group coaching call for the 12-week year, and someone said miracle morning. I'm like, what's that? I'll add anything to my Audible wish list and then go back in. And then I ordered the book itself and then just listened to the podcast and just started off and running with it. So that's been fantastic. It's been really great. So, and with that came a practice of, I'm a hyper person to start with. So sitting and meditating wouldn't be something that I ever would have thought for myself, and tried guided meditations and tried all of it. And then up the street in my town is TM meditation class. Mm-hmm. And I took
Transcendental meditation for those that don't know.
Thank you. Oh my God, I don't even know. I don't know if I've ever shared that it was transcendental meditation. I just say meditation because so many people are like, oh, I have an app for that, right? But no, it is a process of TM. and it is twice a day, and we are in there. Some days I'm like, wow, I did that well. Because I'm like, I don't even remember meditating. And there's other days that I think I get done meditating and I have a to-do list in my head that I'm about to brain dump. I'm like, nah, I should bring that one back in next time. Like, but you learn every day. As long as I have that hour for me and my brain, I'm a better mom. I'm a better advisor. I'm a better friend.
Good for you. Well, thank you for
Bob.
sharing. This is awesome.
Thanks
And
for that question.
where can people find you? If they're like, I really like Donna, where can they find
Oh,
you?
that's sweet. The best place is just go on any of your social media and do Donna Kendrick. So Instagram, Facebook. I think we're on Twitter, but go ahead. Just put
All the
Donna Kendrick.
platforms.
I don't know.
I know it gets a little bit overwhelming. So
Yeah, but it's fine. LinkedIn, just go ahead and you can reach out to us. But all of our books, podcasts, we have a lot of free resources out there. Personal Document Locator is one of them. You can go on Donna Jean Kendrick and you can download that. And that's a great one, just like adding that credit report and sitting with a spouse or sitting with adult children. Like, this is where blank's hidden. This is where the passwords are. This is where my healthcare directive is. This is who we call. Like, this is my accountant. Just one spot. And just leave that with your estate documents or leave it with your trusted contacts. So if something, God forbid, should happen to you, there's a list of next steps.
I love that. Thank you so
Thanks.
much, Donna. I loved having you on again. It was great seeing you. Thank you so much for the work you're doing in the world.
Thank you for this podcast. And yeah, let's keep sharing book ideas. Love it.
Let's do it. Okay. Thanks, Donna. Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, Kristen, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks and have a great day.